You're the youngest, you better do the best.
Yeah.
You ready? Go. All right. All right.
The roof is an aluminum roof with a zinc coating. It's designed to reflect the sunlight back into the atmosphere. The zinc is a protective coating, so if the roof actually gets scratched, it has almost like a self-healing process. So this room is just a great multi-purpose room. We'll have round tables in here where we could have guest lectures and events and so on. But the tables will fold up and we can roll them into a storage place. And this could be an open room. We could have a sack dance in here, a KEC dance. So this is the first faculty apartment. This is for a visiting instructor. It'll be a studio apartment, fully furnished for a lecturer or anybody that comes for it on a temporary basis. Running underneath the length of the drive is the geothermal system. And so the air is preconditioned before it gets in the building. A lot of the systems that you're seeing are not necessarily original, but layering these systems in a single building is quite unique. So to have a wood-burning stove, to have a solar chimney, to have evacuated solar tubes, to have geothermal and an earth duct system, radiant heating in a greenhouse, and all of these different things on top of each other is pretty novel. And so we're hoping that there'll be some synergy, that it'll just do more amazing things than anybody ever envisioned. But we really don't know how the different systems are going to react with each other, which puts, I wouldn't say a burden, but it puts a lot of responsibility on the users of the building to use it effectively.
The Environmental Center is will be a unique experience for the independent school arena.
This is a novel and brave move on the part of our school and Mr. Kohler to create this program.
Those 14 to 16 students have to be the genesis of a larger sort of movement to a change in philosophy, to a change in how we see things.
It represents where we hope education is going in this new century.
The KEC actually has its origins in Herb Kohler's desire to preserve the land that Choate owns that is not immediately used by the everyday life of the program here.
The history of the KEC really started out, I guess, before I started here, as an idea Mr. Kohler had to create a world-class golf course at Choate. His interest is in golf, but it was more importantly for the school not to sell off our undeveloped land.
I was exposed to a piece of land on our east flank, if you will, land of about 260 acres. And it was surrounded by a fairly dense urban environment. And it was just sort of out there. No one was doing anything with it. It was a beautiful piece of land. It had great elevation changes. But when times got tough, I saw the potential for a board of directors slicing off pieces of this land or the land as a whole, selling it to try and enhance its endowment.
It turned out, due to some environmental problems with the land itself, wetlands and other restrictions, it became not viable to put a quality golf course on the property. So Mr. Kohler, to his credit, chose to make a significant donation to the school and endow this environmental center, which would, as part and parcel of it, use the land as a study center and a source for information for the students. And as part of that, we are setting aside the land in its natural state in perpetuity.
Once it was determined, or once the idea came about that this land could be a living laboratory for our students, the question was how best to do that. And we decided the best way to begin considering anything was to bring together a small group of faculty who have interest and knowledge and create a sort of a steering committee, an advisory committee.
The formation of the committee was done trying to represent various constituencies on campus, whether that was admissions, residential life, certain departments.
I participated in almost sort of focus groups as my role as academic department head. What shape would the program take? What would we want to do? What would what would make it an engaging, attractive experience for both in terms of its education and its broader program for adolescents.
And so over several years, several faculty members from a variety of different departments were brought together to think about how can we make this a special experience that would be different from other schools. And the decision was made to make it an integrated approach, as well as to have primary research going on, as well as being a residential situation.
I came into a program that was really 3 years in the planning. Every aspect of the building is planned to in great detail. Much of the curriculum was already articulated, and there were clear ideas in the direction it should go. And so there was a tremendous thought, even right up to the energy use in the building. How long should a shower be? How long would people put lights on? How many times would students wash their clothes? Because of the nature of the building, all those things had to be thought about in tremendous detail.
A platinum LEED building was extremely compelling. I've been in, there aren't many platinum LEED buildings in the world, frankly. I've been in a couple of them, and it's a completely different atmosphere, literally a different environment. We're trying to be sustainable on this campus. We're trying to understand that we are guardians of the earth for the future, but the platinum LEED building is completely different.
A tremendous amount of thought went into this design. The materials that have been selected, the systems that have been created.
The building really lays out as a cloister of 4 separate buildings laid out around a courtyard. There's the greenhouse, a classroom wing, a commons wing, and a residential wing.
Well, one important component of living up there is the net zero energy. So there will be hopefully the same amount of energy produced as is used at the center.
They're going to be monitoring up there their daily use of water, of electricity, trying to create an environment where they're limiting as much as possible their carbon footprint.
We have, I think it's 240 outlets in the KEC whose energy use is monitored, and that's going to be able to be pulled up on a dashboard and on computers. So the students, the teachers, visitors to the KEC can track the electrical usage in the building 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
What we hope is that this will create awareness with the users for the impacts of how they use the building.
But the KEC is really more than just a building. We've spent years now working on a program, a 24-hour program for students that has become now the environmental immersion program at the KEC.
There was a large amount of work done on the programmatic side before the building was designed to determine what the best program, academic and lifestyle program for the Choate students was. And the building was designed to accommodate that.
The philosophy was to create an integrated, interdisciplinary approach to environmental understanding. It wasn't simply going to be science. It had to be some science. It wasn't simply going to be humanities, but it was going to be truly a holistic or an ecological approach to these problems, because the reality is environmental problems today are driven by social, political, economic factors as much as they're driven by technology and scientific understanding.
We wanted to make sure that we had appropriate courses in the social sciences, because that's where really the crux of some of these environmental issues are.
The environmental studies involves an aesthetic. It involves an understanding of the science of the building, the science of the actual environment. It involves art. It involves writing.
Bringing the natural sciences, the humanities, the arts, and the social science all together into one entity surrounded by the environment. It's remarkable.
My hope is that that program becomes an incubator, a place where these new programs and practices start and are tried, and then the main campus benefits from it.
I think it will be a laboratory for 21st century learning, cross-disciplinary studies. Faculty members living and working with students is something that we're used to in a boarding school, but now it's being done in a slightly different way. And so sort of the grand experiment of the American boarding school gets a new lease of life.
One of the big issues actually in development of the program was whether it should be a residential program or not, whether it should be term long, whether it should be year long. And the more we talked about it, the more everybody on the committee believed deeply and firmly that the program needed to be a residential program for the learning that we wanted to achieve to happen.
It's the fact that we're going to be in this community that's building itself in terms of the way that we want to live and operate and all of that sort of thing. The fact that the kids have a lot more agency in the things that we're going to do was really appealing. It's working with the students instead of kind of being in charge of them.
We are going to sit down and talk about that, and talk about what a social contract is and self-governance is, and what responsibilities and opportunities that brings. So in my mind as a social worker, that's exciting, because you're not just creating a building and a program, you're creating a community and a government structure.
Because we're all living and working together in the same space almost all the time. So we're going to have to overcome challenges that a normal dorm doesn't.
We'll all be living together, dealing with the decisions that are made when we're trying to live sustainably within the building, which will really help us live sustainably, because it's a very well designed building for that purpose.
And remember, I'm asking kids to make a sacrifice. They're living away from the main campus, living away from some of their friends and their girlfriends. It's going to be an inconvenience for them. And while they're living there, they're going to take shorter showers and do all of these types of environmentally wise things. But the trade-off to that is that they have ownership over this program. I can't make them do these things. And so it's through self-governance and buy-in that they do these things and monitor themselves and each other voluntarily. And it's the only way it could work.
This is the first of the two instructional labs. This will be the sterile lab or the clean lab. And then there's one next door that's an exact copy of this. That's the dirty lab. So this is a really smartly designed space. Have a lot of natural light coming in, but when the students sit down, the sun isn't right in their eyes, and they can see the board here. This is the pumps for the geothermal well. Circulate the material to the HVAC systems. These are the holding tanks for the evacuated solar tubes. Holds your hot water, stores it, keeps it warm during the night. This is a heat exchange system. That's taking the chemicals that run through the system and exchanging it with water. Examples of some of the monitors. These are the water monitors. So water's monitored, the electricity's monitored, all the various systems, over 200 monitors throughout the building. A place up here with the conditioned air inside the building in that metal box. The conditioned air interacts with the fresh air coming in, exchanges its energy, its heat, and then on its way out before the new fresh air comes in.
I think the Kohler Environmental Center is a remarkable moment in time in education. We live in this specific time where life is changing at a rapid pace, and education is at the forefront of that. And so I think we're rethinking how we approach teaching and learning, and the KEC is a big part of that.
Unfortunately, you know, we like measurable outcomes. I think we're going to slowly see the influence of the students and the center on this main campus as we look to live more responsibly.
My hope, my dream is that the KEC can be a model for how to not just teach and learn better, but to live better. In other words, to be a force for good for the world, to be the moral equivalent of a honeybee. The honeybee doesn't wake up and think, you know, how can I minimize my negative impact on the garden and so on. It is a force for good in pollinating trees and flowers and so on. So can human beings be as wise as a honeybee and change the definition of success and our goals so that we can make the world a better place rather than simply minimize our harm? You know, at the end of the day, if the KEC doesn't work, then we're all in big trouble, right? So we have this very generous donation which leads to a state-of-the-art building and a world-class program. If we can't figure out how to be sustainable under those circumstances, is it going to happen on our main campus? Is it going to happen in Wallingford Public Schools where there's less money? Is it going to happen in Newark, New Jersey? It won't. And so we have to make it work. We can't guarantee it'll work, but this is a question about, can human beings be a force for good in the world? Can we use our best technology, our brightest minds, our most idealistic students and young people, and live life differently and serve as an example for humanity all around the globe in years to come?